We did a walk and talk tour here of the back garden at the Giberson Garden here in Georgia. I don't know how long ago as you're watching this, but we've actually never covered the front garden out there at all. It's quite beautiful. A lot of times when we get here, it's a sunny area, and a lot of times we'll get here and it's full sun, and it's not a great time of day to film it or whatever. We've got a perfect overcast day to do this. We're going to pick you up kind of near where we ended the last video, still back here, and kind of a side garden. We're going to cut up through a gate and go to the front. But this is one of the most beautiful places in this garden. The texture between the Japanese maple and the fennel that's coming up here, and other perennials, other ground covers, some things that'll be blooming later, coneflowers, rudbeckia, other perennials just emerging from the ground here in April. A lot of the spring flowering shrubs are kind of winding down. The things that like it hotter during the summer or bloom in the summer or fall are just really getting going, getting their feet up under them. The red buckeye back here in the background, I think you can see it's been limbed up like many things in this garden over the years, and now it's probably approaching, certainly 25 feet. Something like that, maybe a little bit more than that, and we've caught it in peak flower. I've never seen it flowering when we've been here in the past. There's lots of the early flowering salvia, hot lip salvia, and salvia gregii that are blooming early. It's overlapping some irises. Spirea hasn't bloomed yet, again, but this garden doesn't really rely a whole lot on flowers. It's beautiful year-round with evergreen plants mixed in with some herbaceous things that have different textures, different color greens, different color. It's a frog in the background making lots of noise over there. This is an oasis for a lot of creatures, and so the frogs are back here having a conversation with them. We showed the blatilla, the ground orchids in the last video. Here in full flower. Ours bloom for a long time. We probably get close to 2 months, and then it has that strappy foliage the rest of the season, so it still looks great even when it's not flowering. Which again, you can see all these things coming back for the spring. Really nice rose. Aspidistra. There's a purple foliage redbud up above my head. It's been here a long time too, and it's been allowed, these red buds, here's the rose, I'm getting ahead of Steph here. The rose, really striking. But this red bud, you can see here, it's been for a long time. It's been shaped up and over the fence and then allowed to grow just however it would grow and find its light and find its way through here. But that tree in and of itself would make for a nice garden. And there's 500 other examples of things like that. Again, we'll go out the gate into the front garden. She's actually got some creeping Charlie that's kind of taking over this first bed we get to, but it needs to be some control added to it at some point. There are dwarf Yaupon hollies arranged out here it's like 4 on the back line and 3 and then 4, the same thing on both sides of the porch. There's a ton of containers out here. And then, she has a hole here somewhere. She'll find, something that's come up from seed somewhere in the garden, and she'll either just let it happen in that space or she'll pop it out of the ground. She's got a whole nursery over here, and then she'll just come fill a spot. This red buckeye can stay here as long, heck, this, redbuds tend to be a little bit short-lived in the garden, and that one's already showing some signs of stress back there. Maybe this buckeye is the thing that gets limbed up and takes over this space in the future. Chinese snowball viburnum above our head that's kind of finished flowering at this point. Lots of limbed up. The oldest shrubs here are being limbed up into small trees, and then they're being underplanted. There's a ton of, I think we're going to do a separate video on all the ground covers just out here in this full sun area around this. But this is just a quick walkthrough here of all these containers on the front porch. And again, Virtually, there are some bought things in here, obviously, that were bought intentionally, but a lot of these, she'll take and break a piece off of the salvia just like this, go stick it in a container somewhere, and 6 months later, put it in a pot, you know, having rooted it herself. And so a lot of that. This formal garden, kind of formal right on the foundation frontage. About the only thing that's really formal in this garden. Lots of ground covers. Again, the more bed edges you have, the more pathways you have, the more, you know, you divide spaces up with paths, the more of these type of ground cover things, these kind of staged up or layered up plantings. This Japanese maple this lower branch I think is dying on it. It looks like on this side, but it'll still look fine even when that lower branch is taken off. It's still going to be a good looking tree. Irises, all the stone that's in this property, in this project, was from a cut that the state was making for a road cut not far from here. And that stone was brought, and then they're in the ground and look like they've been here forever. And they're part of this garden. The lamb's ear, looking great. Nandinas, these would have been bright red in the wintertime, and now they've greened up for the summer. So you would have had that really hot red there during the winter time. Now it fades back into the background, and the things in the containers will take over, you know, with the color. She doesn't put a whole lot of annuals in. I saw about 4 trays of annuals that she's bought, and she'll plug some of them into containers like this, but they're small splashes of color. It's not like what we do in Raleigh with our Clown College design, where we'll turn this whole thing into, you know, annual craziness. There's a Shindo viburnum that she's shearing a lot. These will get gigantic, but the shearing she's doing on it is creating this new growth on it that just looks super fresh all the time. Every time we see this plant, it's always got this new growth happening because it's, you know, pruned on quite a bit. Orange rocket barberries in these containers. They're used. We've seen this in other garden designs. These orange rocket barberries are such standouts. You know, she got these in containers, obviously. Almost every transition in this garden, there's 2 of the same plant at the transition. So you'll see that repeatedly in that other tour that we did, but there's another one of those orange rockets. And because she's taking cuttings off of her own plants and creating new plants, things get carried through the garden. So you'll see something repeated multiple times, you know, throughout this garden. Kind of ties it all together. There's a garlic as a ground cover, lamb's ear. We have never been here for the poppies. We're never here in the spring, so we never seen the poppies up and blooming. She has lots of these. If you've ever collected the seed on these, all the seed you'd ever need is just in one of these. Once it matures and browns out, the birds will get some of them. They'll come and peck a hole in there and take some of the seed. But these things there are hundreds of seeds in a single one. So you only need to do them once. She's just allows them to come back wherever they want to come back. You can collect the seed midsummer and then keep it and then spread it in the fall, you know, to be more planned, you know. But hers, she's just whatever seed is dropped on the ground here comes back up, and they'll be gone, you know, they'll be gone by midsummer. Barberries, there's red barberries and gold barberries in this border. I grew and sold so many of these chartreuse colored barberries. They're so easy to sell in the spring because they look like this. They do here in the south not hold the color as well, but for about 3 months every spring, that's what you get. Then ours brown, you know, they green up in the northern part of the country. They'll keep that gold color most of the summer. Of course, they leaf out a lot later up there as well. Fennel coming up here in this front garden as well. And what will happen with it is that it will only live a few years and it'll die in that spot, but then it will come back up from seed, you know, in another spot in the garden. And she'll either edit that, you know, take it out of that space, or allow, and if there's a spot for it to grow, she'll allow it to grow more of these hot lip salvia out in the front garden. Irises. The strappy foliage on that iris, if you think about just, you know, in any space in this garden, you know, this is only going to bloom, you know, for a couple of weeks. And then how is it going to look after that? Well, in this garden, it's got other ground covers around it, other flowering perennials around it, other leafy evergreen shrubs around it. So it just blends right back in. Something else kind of comes to the forefront as you're looking at it. And lots of containers. There are tons of containers here. I'm on the less containers bandwagon right now just because of the watering, but she does have water near the locations where the containers are, and she keeps the containers mulched. This is probably an important piece of information here. This has a hardwood mulch on the top of it, just like she would, you know, for the plants that are in the ground. That's holding a bit of moisture in place and preventing her from having to water quite as much by having a mulch on top of that. Repeated, you know, some of the same things throughout, where, you know, this was something you can dig up. I've found that these lambs here, this is kind of the best spaces for them. Really kind of abused areas on the edges of beds. They tend to look the best. There was a Japanese maple here that died. It was a Japanese maple, wasn't it? That died not that long ago. The big, beautiful rock behind it. I don't know if she's going to come back in here and put what she's going to put back in here, but the hellebores are now going to be in quite a bit of sun. The yews that are back there are going to be in quite a bit of sun. They've been cut flat recently. They're flushing back out, but it's spring. It's not 90 degrees and sunny yet, so I don't know how those will respond, but she's lost some shade in this area. So, you know, sometimes the plants will adjust, sometimes they won't. So if you ever lose a tree like that, just monitor them for the first summer, see what happens. They're so established and the ground's covered enough around those hellebores, they may tolerate it and be just fine. If they're not, yeah, pop them out of the ground in the fall, and you don't pop them out in the heat of the summer while they're burning. Just let it happen and then take them out in the fall and move them. I would imagine she rooted every single one of these boxwoods. If you're walking around with her in this garden, she'll just break something off in her hand and carry it the rest of the time we're talking to her. And then she'll find a pot later and stick it in there, and a month or two later they root. It's rooting by, so if I take cuttings on this boxwood, I mean, you know, I take a really delicate piece off of it and break it off, or this salvia that I've been holding right here. I can root these in a greenhouse under a mist system at a very high level, like, you know, 100% probably on this salvia I could root. If I stuck 100 cuttings, I'd get 100 rooted cuttings. The strategy she's using is just volume. If I stick 50 cuttings, even if I'm not misting them or working on them all the time, I'm still going to get 5 rooted, and 5 is all you need. You know, if you're just trying to make a few more here or there. The poppies again, further down, and then just tons of textured stuff. There's an agastache to the left of that will bloom later in the summer. Lots of things that, again, you're here every season you come here, something's going to be happening. That's a summer flowering thing. We've got the lots of spring flowering things. We've missed the early spring flowering things out here. Interesting transition area. There is a fence around the back garden that's tall enough to keep the deer out. And then everything in this neighborhood that's not fenced in, you can see is limbed up. The only thing, I mean, the neighbor across the street is basically a boxwood and crepe myrtle garden, because that's the things they won't eat over there. She's managed to do, but with her, she's got they won't eat the hellebores, they won't eat the salvias, they won't eat these grasses. The Japanese maples are kind of limbed up on their own. They will eat Japanese maples, so you need larger ones when you plant them and protect them temporarily. from any deer damage. There's a loropetalum tree here. This one's it's probably 25 to 30 feet tall, and it's got exfoliating bark underneath it. You can see, loropetalum in their native areas in China would be, have that exfoliating bark on them and actually become small understory trees in the future. I don't know what that tree is behind it back there. So, it's a juniper, eastern red cedar that's been limbed up next to that loropetalum. She actually sells plants out here. Usually they're out here on the patio here, outside the fence, and people can come and buy plants that she's created from this garden. There's a chocolate vine here, Steph. There's a 5-leaf akebia here. There's an evergreen clematis on this side of the gate. This is the gate where it brings in mulch and, kind of the service gate for the garden. Other salvia out here. Again, it's got to be things that the deer aren't going to, eat. Lots of boxwoods mixed in with it. The deer aren't supposed to eat these cactus, but they do and did last year. There's lots of new growth coming on them, but the deer were hard at work. I mean, they had run out of other people's things to eat. So they appear not to eat the poppies for sure. The poppies are, none of them are sampled. I don't see anything in this sample. Do you, Steph?
They all have fragrant flowers.
Yeah, the lavender is definitely not something they're going to eat. Pretty much everything out here has thorns or fragrant foliage, and that's the combo. They don't seem to eat the fennel. Again, fragrant foliage. Obviously, there's oregano. I saw some thyme that was planted back there. This is salvia that's going to bloom in the summertime. These black and blue salvias, they're sold under a lot of different names. It's all basically the same salvia in my mind, that have the black stems that get about this tall, that have the black calyx and the dark purple flower, but they're sold under black and blue, and what's the one that we... Rhythm and blues, and several other names. A lot of them are very similar. This one can be a bully in the garden, and we've shown that at the house. We're actually still trying to take one out at the house. This one's moved all the way back to the gate in the back. It's covered some ground, and the deer won't eat it, and it will bloom all summer, and it'll be absolutely covered in native pollinators the entire summer. So it is, the stems are striking on it, but it does, unfortunately, eventually need some control. What's that?
Hummingbirds.
Oh, and the hummingbirds. One of the hummingbirds' absolute favorite. There's so much salvia out here, the hummingbirds must be, got to be one of their favorite places. There's some common rue here. We have a meadow rue at the house on our back line, and mainly just for foliage, because it's such an interesting foliage, but this one is coming to full flower out by the road. There's some Tradescantia in several places in this garden. Again, it's a native, and I know people do like it, but it is really hard to dig out, and it's very prolific seeding itself, very difficult. It's a weed in our garden, is what I would call it, because it just, wherever it comes up, when you try to pull it, it breaks off, and then it just comes right back. You have to dig it out. Another barberry, lots of limbed up Chamaecyparis, other conifers on this back area. There's a threadleaf cypress coming up that's limbed up into a tree. And there's an Ilex latifolia that has some deer damage on it. I can see where the deer have been snacking on this one right there, where they could reach, where they could come over here and reach. They've definitely been working on that. Did she hang this soap on here? Is that what that is? Mm-hmm. So she hung that soap on there to try to prevent it. And they've limbed it up. They've limbed it up, or she limbed it up. It's now high enough. It's probably fine. These get a ton of berries on them. Really super interesting foliage. Almost a tropical looking holly. What else stuff are we missing? There's the limbed up threadleaf cypress. Rosemary. getting eaten by the salvia right now. Control will have to be added to that. At some point. I don't know. Looks like she's just pruned this osmanthus back. Doesn't look like that was deer damage. I wouldn't think that they eat the osmanthus. Variegated boxwoods. What a standout these things are. We have these, you know, at the house in little 2-ball, 1-ball topiary and a little 2-ball topiary. Scaled to our garden space and scaled in her garden space, you can just let the thing grow. But in these shadowy spaces like this, there's really nothing better than these variegated boxwoods. Looks like a Foster holly there, also being limbed up by the deer. And then a Goshiki osmanthus, another one of those gold barberries. The lamb's ear, again, you'll see some things repeating. There's a blue star juniper. And she'll just plug stuff in, and it has to figure it out, right? It absolutely is in charge of figuring itself out. I love the layering right here. You've got the Procumbens Nana juniper, okay? These could be anything you want to do with these. She's got these planted all over the garden. I imagine she's rooting them and not buying, you know, the hundred of them there are in this garden. You know, I would imagine she's rooted them. And then this salvia, almost certainly she's rooted. Iris is coming up through that. Behind it, you have a loropetalum that's being sized, controlled by the cryptomeria sitting on its head. And that transition up is really super nice. And then there's a green giant arborvitae on the corner, which, you know, gets absolutely massive and is in the process of getting massive. One thing I'll point out in here, this is a dwarf Alberta spruce, and this is zone 8A, Athens, Georgia. These things really don't like to be here all that much, but most of hers, the ones in containers and in the ground, are pretty healthy overall. They don't, you know, here we can get spider mites on them really badly because they just get heat stressed and they don't like it here. But what you're seeing here is everything planted so densely. So it's plant it tight and then edit later. Okay, that's the strategy. So this lantana that fills in up under here, you can see this gap under here. Almost certainly that's that lantana every year running itself right up under there. There's some ajuga planted behind it in a little more shade. Grasses, bulbs were planted out here. The roots of this plant are well protected. So it's got mulch and then plants as well, acting as a living mulch around this plant. And so there's a lot of things that are marginal for cold here and a lot of things that are marginal for heat here. But they both perform equally well when they're crowded into a space a bit. Not overcrowded, you don't let anything lay on top of it up here, but where each of them is shading its neighbor's roots, they're living together pretty peacefully, with the occasional, again, hard edit that has to happen in a very thickly planted garden. But I like to point that out. This is a plant that really, really struggles in this area of the country. So there you go. There's a quick view of the front garden space here. There's another side of the driveway over there as well, but just an incredible use of texture and foliage color. Flowers, but not leaning so far into flowers. And then repeating some of the same stuff as it goes, and rooting some of the easier to root things and filling those holes in the garden. There's really not hardly any weeds here. Some of the things have become a little weedy that need a little bit of control added to them, but there's very few weeds because most of the ground plane is covered here. It's either covered with a plant or it's covered with mulch. So there's not, even in the back garden, there's really very few weeds in this garden. Again, there are some plants that have become a little weedy that need some control added to them. You know, if we want to call those weeds, we could, but nothing that needs to be, there's no weed. Everything is here with intent. Let's just call it that. So there it is. There's the front of the Giberson Garden, the street view that people get riding by it. They have no idea that walking through either one of those gates is going to take them into a wonderland with 7 waterfalls and all the things that are in that back garden. There's a playlist on the channel for the Giberson Garden if you want to go back and take a look at any of the back garden videos. Thanks for watching.